Yeah, well, kicked it on.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this opportunity to gather as a unit. We pray that you be with not only our county, but our nation as well. We ask that you be with those who are fighting the fires and fighting the storms and the people of the hurricanes and the dryness and the wetness and just so much going on in our world, dear Lord. We just ask for your guidance. We ask for your healing. We ask for your coming together. And we ask for your healing for those who especially need it, that are fighting addictions and depressions and such. And dear Lord, at this time of harvest, we ask that you watch over our farmers as they harvest to feed the world. We ask all these things in your precious name. Amen.
Amen.
The council's had an opportunity to read the minutes as outlined on the agenda, and if so, I look for any corrections or a motion to approve them.
Kim Meredith will make a motion to approve as presented.
Do I have a second?
Vicki Kivett makes that second.
Thank you. Any comments? Being none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Minutes pass. 6-0. First up, Morgan County Library Construction Fund.
Good evening.
So what we're asking for tonight is an additional appropriation of a very specific amount, $19,469.82. This money is money that was earned in interest on our construction fund from our bond, our $2.2 million bond. We're finishing up our project, and if you'll recall from way back 2 years ago when we first started talking about this, the bond money only covers a portion of the construction, and the rest would be coming from our rainy day and our LRF funds. So by having this additional $19,000 that we can spend, it will just allow us to keep that rainy day money for some other projects. So this is cash on hand. It's not any tax increase. It's just the asking to be allowed to spend the money that we earned in interest. Are there any questions?
Any follow-up questions, comments, concerns? Being none, I look for a motion.
Paul Prather will make the motion that we grant the $19,469.82 capital outlay to the Morgan County Library Construction Fund.
Paul's made a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. No further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very
Question
much.
before you leave, when will it be open to public?
It is open to the public already. We've
It
been
already
open since
has
the
been.
last week of August. We're still operating on some limited hours.
Okay.
And I would like to invite any members of the council, if you would like a tour, I'd be love to give you a personal tour. There are a few spaces that are still closed that we're just doing finishing touches on.
Great.
But we're mostly open.
Beautiful.
I'm looking forward to coming
Come
over.
on over and see us.
Thank you. Morgan County Solid Waste District.
Oh, baby.
The Solid Waste District is seeking additional appropriation in the amount of $6,668.40, rounded up. We need to move a transformer at the transfer station on Rose Lane, which will give us the appropriate access to our new site. The sheriff's site's moving over there. So we're going from a transformer wood pole to steel. And we are going to steel because it'll take away any guide wires and give us the appropriate area that we need. So this is an actual cost. If anybody has any questions.
Any further questions, comments, concerns? Being none, I look for a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Dave. Do I have a second?
Kim Meredith will second.
No further discussion. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same sign. Good luck with the move.
Thank you.
on that vote.
Local health maintenance,
I can speak to that. This is, in the budget, when the budget was approved for 2020 for the local health maintenance fund, the actual budget approved by the council was less than the amount that was approved by the state. This budget, they need to be one and the same amount. And the difference had to do with personal services, the wages and benefits, and so we need to increase the budget in order that they're both in sync. This is all this does. This year, when you passed the 2021 budget, you did approve the budget for the same amount that the state approved. The differences in salary, the estimated amount in salary in the budget that was submitted to the state is always normally higher than what the council finally approves, which was the case in 2020 and also the case in 2021. But we went ahead in 2021 and increased the FICA amount so that the total personal services is the same. Seems to me to be kind of a picky thing on the state's part, but you got to deal with what you got to deal with, so.
just reconciling their
This-
payroll.
Just reconciling the payroll. It's not
I
changing.
look for a motion.
Vicky Kivett makes a motion that we approve $2,132 into Fund 1168-000-4165.10 FICA in the Local Health Maintenance Fund 1168.
I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Further discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6-0. Public safety dispatch.
Good evening.
Good evening. I think I have some paperwork here for you. Print this out. I think some of these stuff in the budget got printed out.
It's in our email.
You may not have all.
When did he pick the ring? At your guidance?
Yep.
Picked it.
Like 18 pages, part of that, yeah. I got that.
Good question.
Thank you.
He specifically stated that in his letter, so.
I'm asking for additional appropriation for remote call taking positions for 911. This would give us the ability, in case of COVID, another pandemic, something like that, to be able to work in a remote location. Probably not work from home because of the logistics of being able to go out, pick the equipment up, move it to the next person who's going to be on duty's residence. But if we could set up secure locations and then work remotely, if for some reason we had to socially distance even further than what we've been socially distancing. This would also give us the ability to dispatch and handle our CAD calls. Asking for this from the rainy day fund, because talking to Josh, he believes that this would be probably reimbursable through the CARES Act.
Thanks, Scott. So to kind of underscore Scott's point, this is something we hope isn't necessary. You know, we have our CARES Act money, and if something were to happen to our dispatch center, we would want to be able to continue to operate seamlessly. So this would give us the full capability to work remotely wherever that needs to be and do all of our functionality that we would want. We're pretty confident, like many of these things we've come to you before on, that this would be reimbursable under the CARES Act. And so we feel like now's the time to do this. We probably wouldn't expend this money at another time. And so this is something we want to take advantage of, and that's why we're here tonight.
What would be a location that you're thinking of that you could operate from?
We maybe put one somewhere, maybe like the sheriff's department's training room if it's available. Just someplace where we can, even in this building, if we could find one room that we can kind of secure off where people won't be in and out, and they can kind of be off to their side in the courthouse or any other governmental building or a fire department or a police department, someplace where we could just secure them off in one room, where they wouldn't have any interactions with people, where we could socially distance, but we could keep the equipment secure. Yeah, technically, yes, you could work from home with this equipment. It has that capability, but the logistics of going out when you have a shift change, you'd have to retrieve it beforehand and then take it to the next person's house. That logistically, that's probably not going to work real well, unless we can set up some kind of staggered implementation or staggered shift, which we could do, but we'd still, it'd probably take us down to, for an hour or so, an hour and a half, it would take us down to 3 positions as opposed to 4. And that kind of puts us in a, in a pickle if something fairly significant happens during that time frame.
Are there other counties that are doing the same thing?
Johnson County already has remote.
Johnson County already
Yeah.
has this.
Yep.
Any other counties that you know of that have been doing this because of the current pandemic?
I have read articles in the paper, or not paper, but in trade magazines of different counties. Some out in Maryland, out west, or out east coast have been doing remote call taking. It's something that's really fairly new to the 911 system, the ability to do the remote call taking. And it has to do with the change of technologies in handling the calls and making things more IP-based as opposed to phone line-based.
Is this something just in the last month that's come up that you've looked into? Since I don't remember this being mentioned during budget time, that this was a project that you were working on, so I was just curious.
We opted to, I talked to Josh about it when we were doing our budget prep, and he thought it was best to handle it through the CARES Act as opposed to regular general fund money.
What type of situation would be created to not be able to use the dispatch center?
Well, another pandemic, if we had, knock on wood, we've been very fortunate on no positive cases in our facility, but we're in such close proximity, we have a closed system as far as our air handling. So if we had something that was fairly virulent and infectious, it could go through us pretty quickly. I mean, honestly, that's the hazards. Everybody has to work.
Johnson County's your backup, correct?
Yeah,
And
Johnson
they
County's our
have this.
backup,
Okay.
yes.
Have you put any kind of shielding up between your stations out there?
Fortunately, we've got enough room in the facility and the way the facility is designed with the number of positions. We can socially distance and keep 6 people on staff and socially distance. But, that's under the current guidelines. If the guidelines would change or, you get something else that's more viral than COVID, that could particularly change. If we have to shut the facility down for a deep cleaning, that would be another issue that we would run into.
How confident are you that we'll get reimbursed? I mean, we're starting to have a lot of outlays, and
Yeah,
the
that's
reimbursement
right.
ticket's starting to get rather large, and if it does
That's right.
fall through, there could be consequences of
It
not
certainly-
getting reimbursed.
Right, it certainly could, and like all these things, I want to be really clear with that. I think this falls well within the provisions that have been given to us from the state, passed down from the feds, that this would be something acting in good faith in response to COVID. They are giving municipalities, the feds are and the state are, large leadway to make the best decisions they can, but that doesn't mean it's a slam dunk. It could get disputed later, and so that is something worth knowing. I just think that it is well within the guidelines.
I read through everything that you sent us, and there were a lot of things that were left open that said this would be an additional charge. This would be an additional charge if you want this or this. And I mean, there were several things that the 171,664 could easily become 215,000 is how I was reading it. So I have a difficult time at putting out $170,000 when I know that you would be the essential of the essential, and I think we would try every way possible to keep that.
Right. What exactly were you reading that could be an additional charge?
There was, well, I didn't mark them, and I should have, but there was It was the part about being at a different locale per station. There was gonna need to be something purchased that was about, I thought it was like $8,500 per item, and I added those up. I can't do it right now. I should have made note of it. I apologize. But I did read through it, and there were several things that it was gonna come up to additional funds for that. Like,
Well, Scott, aren't you going to have desks and everything else to wherever you would be putting this together at? It's not just as simple as moving a radio in. You're going to have a place to set it up and a chair for people to sit in for, you're going to come and tell us it's a 12-hour shift, and we can't just have a wooden chair with a solid back and
Yeah,
things
I
of that
mean,
nature.
There would have to be some provisions made for that. I mean, and if we had to, we could relocate chairs from the dispatch center and, you know, a simple desk, no bigger than this is. A simple desk or even one of these tables would be sufficient.
the concern is the dated amount of the equipment. I mean, if you buy this equipment now, it's not used at this period, you know, hopefully nothing happens. And so we've spent $171,000 on equipment that if it hits again in 2 years, it's outdated. So I just feel that it's just too big a number for me.
Okay. And can I answer to that? Just to explain, this would become part of our AT&T 911 plant equipment lease, our capital lease that we have. So going forward, this buys us into that lease, and then when we renew our lease, this equipment falls under that lease also, so it will be maintained as our 911 equipment is now. We get all the updates, we get hardware refreshes, we get software updates, everything, that's all taken care of.
But would that also mean that we're increasing our budget for this equipment by $171,000?
For the lease?
Yes.
No.
It will increase the lease amount. We're going to have to make some changes in that lease when we renew it anyways in 2023, I believe it's when it's coming due. Because we have 8 911 lines flowing into the center. That's more, and the reason we have that is because we were under an agreement. The Sheriff's Department had 3, Mooresville had 3, Martinsville had 2, so that totals up to 8. That's actually more 911 lines than we need because that's more 911 lines than I have
Okay.
people present to answer them. I've got more lines than there's people present.
But if I go by that logic, then, you know, to me, this isn't a fixed dollar amount. I mean, if you're not using those lines, then that means, wow, there's some savings that can be had. But I guess, you know, I'm not inclined to say, oh, let's fill that savings with something else.
Right, yeah, and that's fine. This would be an opportune time, if CARES is going to reimburse for this, this would be an opportune time. This is, you know,
I guess,
something we probably wouldn't normally be able to afford, but.
and I guess my biggest concern, I mean, I'll be honest, when I came in, I was actually pretty positive about supporting this because of the CARES funds to be able to pay for it. And I was not thinking so much about pandemics as much as a tornado hit, we had power outages. This allows us some flexibility if that was a one-time cost. But if I'm going to be looking at a similar cost every couple of years, then that becomes a bigger concern for me.
I guess what it does is, like I said, it buys us into our current lease, and then we don't have to pay, our current lease will not increase until it's up for renewal, and then when we renew, that's when we renegotiate for number of lines, reduce the number of lines. This equipment would already be in there, so.
And I get that. I'm zeroed in on this. If this is $171,000 for right now as a one-time purchase, then I like the idea. But if it's $171,000 right now, and then every 2 years we have to pay $100,000, $150,000, that's a different ballgame for me. Is if this, what would be those recurring costs roughly that we would be doing every couple of years when we renew this lease?
Yeah, and I wouldn't have that figures until the lease comes due and we have to renew the lease. I'm guessing, I mean, I put it on our capital improvement plan, I'm guessing that our lease will be somewhere about $1.3 million. But it'll be spread out over several years by AT&T, that's how they do it, so. That's a rough guess on my part, just based on trends I'm seeing from other agencies and talking to other agencies.
Well, I would,
I'm just confused because I thought technically, if a tornado wipes us out up on the hill, which is a high probability based upon the fact that it's tornado-proof, that we have Mooresville and Johnson County as backups.
We do.
So this would be a duplication of a duplication.
Right.
That's the only, that's my only,
And they have,
and I'm not guaranteed that it will be recovered, and we're,
That is completely correct. The only, like I said, the
He has
only
the
reason
system.
is because of the CARES
so we have
Act.
a duplicate with a duplicate.
we can go over and sit in 2 seats over there, and we can sit a seat or
Yes.
2 up in Mooresville till we get. And we got a command bus that we can,
Well, we
Yeah.
can deploy this into a command bus, but, you know, the command bus basically is going to be a dispatch position only, not a call taking position. So,
any other questions? Anybody like to make a motion? Second call for a motion. Third and final call for a motion. Item dies due to a lack of a motion.
thank you.
Thank you for your consideration.
Lit Economic Development Fund, Park and Recreations.
That's your transfer.
Mr. Hale may have put
Man
something
of
on there.
many hats.
We're asking for a transfer of funds right now out of the director's salary. We have maintenance supplies and some different items that we know need to purchase. There's a restroom being built. And in dealing with the commissioners early on in this year, and I'm nearly certain that we talked about this at some point, the parks is sort of its own entity and not rolled under what Michelle's able to do with her staff. And so knowing that we have supplies and equipment that are going to need to be purchased on an ongoing basis and not having a director, we're asking we move that out of the director's salary into maintenance, operating supplies so that we can purchase, Michelle will purchase those things on behalf of the parks. Valita and her crew will work out there and do it.
This is for that legal
Oh, sorry,
services.
okay.
This is the one that you brought to me today
Yes,
for the legal services.
okay, thank you. We have a second one, right.
No. The other one doesn't require council action.
Okay. So there is a legal dispute, as you all are probably aware, with property lines up at Waverly Park. Commissioners have been paying for that out of their budget. The newest invoice came in, it was $15,000 and change. We felt be moved into a professional services line item to cover some of that.
That makes sense.
And there will be more. I talked to Kenny today about this. This is likely going to go to a jury trial. We know we're going to have more expenses, and so we would love to reserve the professional services for the commissioners for ongoing expenses.
So that's why it's at the 31,068
We,
versus.
yeah, we took the rest of the budget out of the Parks Director for now. Thank you, Dan. for
Any further questions?
reining me
There's a
in.
lot of land in dispute.
I don't know the details. I don't believe that it is a lot of land, but
actually, I'm familiar with that particular issue, and there are some very old surveys. I'm referring to very, very old surveys that were in dispute, and one survey, one party says it's this, and the county says, no, it's this older survey. And so there's that dispute right there. So it's really of a survey type of dispute more than anything else.
Okay.
yes, agreed.
But with that being said, I will be happy to make a motion, if no one has any other questions, to transfer $31,068 from the Parks Director's salary to professional services.
Have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion or questions? Being none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Good luck.
Thank you.
Morgan County Library Declaration of Fiscal Body.
Lot of stuff
Wow.
to say.
is a new requirement for libraries starting this year. It's a result of Senate Enrolled Act 410, which places some more restrictions on library budgets. It requires us to declare who our fiscal body is, which is the Morgan County Council. You guys have always been the ones who have approved our budgets. In some instances, in some library districts, there can be an additional entity that can have a binding review on a library's budget due to if, say, the library is in a town or is in a county, but the majority of the people are in the town. It's just very complicated. Ours is very simple. You guys have always approved our budgets, and all this form does is declaring to the state library that, yes, you're the ones who continue to approve our budgets. It is not that we intend or have any plans or even thinking that we will need a binding review at any time in the future, but we do have to submit this paperwork saying that the Morgan County Council is the designated fiscal body that approves the library's budget. So it's basically a paperwork exercise on our part. So.
Require a vote?
I think so. It requires this fiscal body acknowledgement that says you are supposed to adopt this report that is the copy that you have in your packet. So I would, it wouldn't hurt to have it in your minutes that it was a motion and that it was approved, and then it would be signed by your fiscal body president. So.
There's a document here for once the council, I presume, will approve the declaration of, that the county council is the declared the fiscal body for the library, then Brian will need to sign, and then it has to be submitted to DLGF.
Actually, it goes to the state library.
Oh, it goes to state library,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, by October 1st.
Kim Meredith will make a motion that the Morgan County Council will continue to act as the fiscal body over the Morgan County Library's budget.
I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Paul Prather will second.
Thank you, Paul. Any further questions or discussion? Being none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7-0.
You get your signature on there.
Put that
so
sign
no
away.
problems.
Speaking of, when do we get to see the new digs?
Oh, she already talked about that. Yep. It's open.
Far distance away, I might have to walk a whole block. I will stop by
Really
next week.
Yeah, I didn't date it.
Here, I'll give this to you, and I have a copy that, he'll sign my copy.
Okay. Having council meetings on Wednesday with my biological clock, I had an idea that we would
I'm presuming
think
more
about it,
people-
so I'll set the blow right in.
I think so too, yeah, and I'll make sure it gets submitted, so.
Okay, you're welcome.
It is time for the 2021 public hearings of the budgets. First up, Tall Oaks Lake Conservancy District. I think I called it Twin
Jackson
Oaks.
Township, right?
Green.
Green?
No,
It's-
it's
Is it actually
Jackson.
called Tall Oaks or Twin Oaks?
The lake is Twin Oaks, but the addition is called Tall Oaks.
Okay.
For
So
whatever reason, we call it Tall Oaks Lake. I don't know.
No wonder we're confused.
Okay.
So the financial consultant advised us to advertise or input a very high budget, knowing that once again, we'll come back to a meeting later to reduce that, and we're just still in the process of trying to figure out the whole mess. So there's good things happening in that we have a grant for the water system that has just been approved. However, it's going to take quite a long time to have those funds available, and so we're just trying to figure out what are we going to cost, and later on, we still will be under a larger burden than we would wish because there's only 19 homes to pay the operation and maintenance of the water system. And so it's still unfortunately going to be high for all of us. The dam also, we're working on that and using state funds. So the budget won't look like this. We hope it'll be closer and pray that it will be lower than what we've had this year. So that's the update. And just need to come back and ask for the,
So are you saying then at the October 5th meeting for the adoption that you'll be coming back with the amount that you want the council to approve? Or are you saying that reduction will occur when DLGF reviews it?
I think it would be closer to the DLGF time because I just don't think we'll have enough information yet on October 5th,
Okay,
if that's okay.
well, that's up to these folks, but
It's fine, we let it come back and decide whether we want to, once we hear what it really is.
Well, we'll have to take an action on it on October 5th. Okay, any other questions? Questions from the public? Being none, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Harrison Township Fire District?
As we all know from the email, the gentlemen who were supposed to come today, one of them has surgery, and so he was put on quarantine. Thank you, forgot the word. But I did speak to him yesterday, and he sent us the information. They've worked really hard to make sure that people of Harrison Township are being served efficiently. They're really, really pleased. One of the things they told me is that Vargasville is coming out and doing fire hydrant checks, something that they don't ever recall ever happening. They're also going to be doing I forgot the term that he used, basically going to be going to encourage people to change their sectors. Thank you. I should let you answer that.
Just trying to help you.
I appreciate it. My brain was not working in that direction. But he did want to say that if need be, since he is in quarantine, he's at home. If we need to call him and ask him any questions, that he'd be happy to answer those questions.
I've heard good things with their partnership with Barkersville, and they're below their levy, so I have no problem with what they're submitted.
yeah, Harrison's good.
I know they're going as District 20, and they seem to be here quite a bit, so as long as they're happy. It kind of surprised me how often Bargersville's being called upon, so it's good that they're still willing to help us out. No further questions? Any public comment on Harrison Township Fire District? Being none, Monroe Township Fire District. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so this is my first experience,
Well, welcome.
hopefully the last. I got a little short prepared statement, which is the first page. It says, "My name is Robert Burling. I am a member of the Monroe Township Fire District Board, with consideration of maintaining a $2 million fire protection, $1 million plus of apparatus and operating expenses, including state and federal mandates concerning such things as employee wages and equipment replacement intervals. We are appointed to the board for the purpose of overseeing fire protection services for the citizens of Monroe Township. Our board has over 80 years of combined experience in fire protection and EMS. We do not take lightly the need to increase our own taxes. We're making an effort to perform our appointed tasks as economically as possible. Our general fund budget for 2020 is $220,431. Our proposed budget for 2021 is $445,472. The primary purpose of the increase is to provide 2 firefighters on station 24/7 for a rapid response to emergencies. We believe the best solution to providing 24/7 on station personnel is to use paid standby firefighters. The pay rate is $13.50 per hour. We're not asking for full-time personnel at this time. However, we believe that would be necessary in the near future due to rapid growth in Monroe Township. A 3-cent per 100 increase for Monroe Township residents only will supply the necessary funds. In 1970, Monroe Township had a volunteer fire department. Around that time, EMS transport was provided by a funeral home hearse. In 1970, that was acceptable, and a major improvement over 1950 when we had no fire protection or fire department at all. I doubt that our citizens in 2021 would be pleased with the above described 60s and 70s emergency services. If you have a fire or emergency, how long would you like to wait for help to arrive? And I must add that a trip to the hospital in a modern ambulance with trained personnel and life-saving equipment is a major improvement over the hearse. My request for the county council is to consider the merits of our request. If you agree that we have a reasonable proposal, approve our budget so that we can take the next steps of making our case to the taxing board and the DLGF. Attached to these comments is a social media post by our fire chief informing the citizens of a petition to increase taxes by approximately 3 cents per 100. It further explains our position in this matter, and you can review that. And he's here if you had any questions. The budget I have on the back is a upload, or let's see what I'm saying. It was a file in QuickBooks, and I forgot to take off the part where it says it's actual compared to budget, but it gives you the idea. Of the $222,000 increase, at least $205,000 is nothing but labor. The other would be we increased value. We increased our lawyer fee from $250 to $750. That means we can talk to somebody for 3 minutes instead of 1. And the maintenance on the vehicles, we increased that some. I think we increased the fuel from $6,000 to $7,000 a year. We're on track to run almost 500 runs this year. That's like 1.2 or 3 a day. If the fire chief spends 2 hours per run, and he's not a full-time fire chief, he has other work, that means he's spent like 1,000 hours a year, and 2,000 hours a year would be 40 hours a week, would be a full-time job. So it's time to do something. And when we just, and there's no way that you can add 3% a year to the budget and be able to deal with what needs to be dealt with. So I'm nervous. I'm usually not nervous.
All right, you're doing fine.
So, questions?
Do you know the new subdivisions, well, not so new, some of them, but do you know what your population has grown in as far as residents in the last 5 years?
There was a thing about increasing your taxes because of the growth. I took a look at it, and as I remember, we're like, you had to subtract 4% because it must have been an automatic increase over the years, and we were going to be able to increase ours by 8,800, so that was 4%. So I'd say our growth is probably 8% based on the results from, I think it was maybe a 2018, 5,400 people.
5,400?
Something like that. And I figured you divide 5,400 by 3, that'd be 2 adults and a child, that's 1,800. If we get 600 names on a petition, that would be pretty good. They've started a petition, but just started this weekend. We were a little we didn't pull the, fast enough. I don't know how many names they've got
That was what I was going to ask. I saw you had the petition at the tractor drawing,
We did.
and did you have much response?
Well,
What did you feel was?
Stephen, the fire chief, got, I think he said he had 10 on his. I haven't signed it yet, so that's 11. And there's another fellow that was taking them, and we didn't talk to him tonight. We don't know what he got yet, but
So we had like 35 positive responses on our Facebook
that's what I was
page.
going to say. Tell him,
Yes.
you put it on Facebook to get the message out.
Right, I've had several emails. The problem was that we weren't sure how to, everybody wanted to do an electronic signature, and we haven't figured out how to do that legally yet. So that's kind of what the holdup was on to get that started. Because I think once we put it out electronically, it will go fast.
I was just curious what kind of response you were getting even in the comments as far as how people felt about this. I mean, I know if I lived in that area, I would not have an issue with,
No, we've not had one person against it. I had 2 or 3 emails, they wanted more questions, but they were in favor of it. They needed a little more information.
yeah, what are we going to see out of that?
Our township is reportedly the fastest growing. You need an apple syrup? Yeah.
And we'll
But
continue.
Mike is our chairman, Stefan's the fire chief.
Our major concern is the warehouses. We have 2 large, they're over 1 million square foot warehouses proposed in our area, which are going to employ 200 or 300 people a day. So, and the warehouse take a huge tax on our fire service. The employees seem to call 911 a lot.
That could result in additional training that you're going to need for
Correct.
those types of
Yeah.
fires.
Correct. It's going to completely change the way.
That growth is coming. I mean, they have no further to go in Hendricks County. They're coming your way.
Right.
How many houses have we added in the last year in the subdivision to the north?
Roughly 180.
How many more when they go ahead and build behind the fire station?
I think it's just over 200.
How about across the road, they're supposed to be doing a development?
That's all proposed. There's nothing for sure across the road.
It- But it's going to happen.
Right. But there's nothing set in stone.
And there's still continued growth off of Baltimore there, just
Correct.
off
Yeah.
of 42 also.
And
Yes.
we cannot get volunteers. We've tried everything. We're out of options.
Fortunately, a lot of the volunteers have jobs that don't allow them to, or a lot of the citizens have jobs that don't allow them to volunteer if they have that desire, so.
Right.
I've got hearing aids in, but I can't read lips with the mask on, so.
All I had done is commented on that a lot of the people who would prefer to volunteer because of their job situation, they're not in a situation where they can.
There is, I was on the fire department from 1970 to 1983. I was a volunteer. We paid for our own turnout gear. We,
I miss your fish fries.
paid our own gas. We worked all night and then run our own business during the day. Volunteer, you can forget.
Yeah.
Fire volunteers. You cannot expect somebody to go out and do all the training and abide by all the regulations that people think we need to abide by. You just aren't going to have them. And then, now, we had maybe a couple of volunteers left, but we're doing this 10-hour shift, 2 people. So you're going to pay that guy who's a volunteer. Once you pay him, he's no longer a volunteer. Because if he comes in again, say he goes home after the 10-hour shift and 2 hours later he comes back in, he's not a volunteer. You can't pay him $10 for the trip. You got to pay him by the hour because it's a federal law says you do.
He's an employee.
It's really, he's an employee.
Well, I do commend you for being forward-thinking and not waiting until you are stuck to be thinking about what do you need to do. I mean, no one wants to raise taxes, so, but I think reaching out to your citizens, getting their thought, their input, explaining, I mean,
I don't wanna
numbers
raise
don't look
taxes.
unreasonable, but.
I pay plenty of them already. But you got to do
My
what you
fear
got
is
to
it's
do.
too late for next year.
It's too late.
My fear is,
I mean, it's too late. We talked, remember I talked
Yes, we
about the
talked.
okay, so
process?
I am right. It's too late.
I'm supposed to get
Remember,
laughed out of the county
I told you
council
about
meeting.
how that you needed to start the process for levy excess appeal? You guys did nothing about starting that process. It's too late to start that process for next year. The highest budget you can be approved for next year, either reduced by this council, or if not by the council, DLGF will reduce it, is $198,000. The highest levy you can have for next year is $78,849. Those are just the rules. We talked about that, Bob. Your levy that you're looking at is a 569% increase. The levy increase, your budget, your 440, I got 442, but.
I'm sure you know what you're talking about.
But the levy, the property tax levy that it would take to fund that budget would be $505,000. Under the levy limit rules that we all have to operate under, your maximum levy for next year is $78,849. You gotta start that levy excess appeal, you gotta start it in the spring. You can't be starting it now.
Or if you start it now, you're starting it for 2022.
You could start it for 2022, but it just frustrates me. That mean, and we talked, Mike and I talked about, of course, this is just, I don't know. The fire departments in this county have got to start working together and consolidating, because you're not gonna get the tax base you need to provide the services that are necessary without increasing your tax base. It isn't going to happen. Plain and simple. You guys have got to start working together and organizing, consolidating together, because you're never, ever, ever
When's the next
going to be
chiefs
able to fund
meeting?
these budgets.
What you're trying to say is it's a waste of time to come here.
No.
Well, no, I
Came
mean,
at-
there's nothing anyone
What
could,
you're also trying to say is that we need to go another route to do this.
yes, you do.
And I am not in favor of a countywide fire department.
There you go.
And I do not want to tell Martinsville how to do their business, and I don't want them to tell us how to do ours.
The Monroe Township utilize a professional,
That mindset, you'll never.
accounting firm.
You'll
Does-
never be able to provide the services.
Township Fire District utilize a professional accounting firm to help them with this process. I work for Madison. We use somebody, Peters Municipal Consultants, that will help us when we need to increase the steps that we need to take to do. They will set you out a timeline of what steps you need to do to be able to work with the auditor
Great
and get
idea.
the
Who
information.
is that and how much is it going to cost?
It's gonna cost money. I'm not saying it's
Where
not
are you
gonna
gonna
cost
get it?
money. That's the problem. You'd have to work it into a current budget or find we use Peters Municipal Consultants.
Yeah,
Say
I
that one
mean,
more time.
Peters Municipal Consultants. I can get you all their contact information.
You're better than I can.
But somebody that can help you with this process, if it's not something that you guys are used to doing, you need help.
In all fairness,
What about talking to our legislator and getting some kind of a special bill run through the state to establish us a little different than we are, so we can get some special
you're
money
probably
and take it
faster
away from
doing
here.
it.
Faster doing
Because
it
the
my
only
way.
person that's going to matter to is Monroe Township, because all the rest of the people, somebody from Evansville will be happy to vote for it, because it wouldn't affect them a bit.
Well, here, what Dan was saying, there's two things Dan was saying. One, of course, is that we've got to be thinking about how we do fire protection in a bigger scheme in the future. But that's another day, another conversation. The more immediate need, for you is.
You didn't
how-
ask us if we wanted to spend another 11.7 cents on ambulance. I was for it.
That process started at an earlier time, though.
That
That's
may
what
be,
he's
that's
saying, that
right,
it-
that's okay.
Yeah,
I
it has
understand the
to-
timing, what he's talking about.
What,
But I'm saying that nobody asked us about that. We are happy to have the ambulance.
Well, there were open meetings regarding.
I was for it to start with.
And that's what Dan is trying to say here, is just that what you're trying to do is many of it, no one here has said that you're wrong. You're absolutely right. You need to be thinking about the future. You have a lot of growth happening in Monroe. The issue right now is this budget can't be approved, even if we all were like, yeah, we love it, we think it's a great idea. We can't approve it right now because it has not gone through the correct legal process.
Okay.
And that takes time. Now, what you can do is now prepare so that this time next year, it could be approved. That's all that's going on here right now. We just don't have the ability. It's not legal. But what we can do is say, well, what can we do as a county, as a fiscal body, to help you prepare so that next year you're on time, you're ready to go.
That's, okay, I got that part. Now, I have one more question for you since we're here. When you put in the ambulance, you took away our safety money, 20 grand. 20 grand plus our money we already had means that you reduced our budget by 12%. So, and I don't know that we got the 2.9% that I've heard all this rumor about. That's 15. There ought to be some consideration somewhere that we can get a little more money. I know, can't do it. Too late,
Not this year,
whatever.
not this year. But here though, is
Well, I've offered to buy 20 buckets and paint them red and put them in front of the fire station
the,
at my own expense, so.
and that can help you increase your budget, because that would be revenue into your fund to fund your budget. But,
That bucket.
but,
Help contribute.
but between now and October 5th,
That's all right. I understand
you
your
need to come
problem.
back with a budget that's at 198,000.
I got it, okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right, well, it's been an interesting evening. I'm not nervous anymore.
You did a good
Y'all
job.
have,
And I did not like to be the bad, the
y'all
bad
have a
news.
nice- Y'all have a nice evening.
Okay.
One question.
Yes,
Why are you totally against countywide fire?
pardon?
Why are you against countywide fire?
I don't know that I really would be against it.
Did you
But-
state that you were a volunteer at
But
one time?
there's so many different diverse groups around. I mean, Brown Township's doing a good job, I think. I believe Greg is doing a good job now. Our people are doing a good job with what we got. I mean, there's just something about, I don't think that somebody in the northern part of the county should tell somebody in the southern part of the county what to do. They know more about what they need to do than we do.
That's why if
Local
it ever
rule,
would
I
go
like-
through,
I-
you'd have to have
I would be in
representation
favor
from
of
both
local
ends of the
rule.
county.
Yeah, I mean, a countywide fire is not, you're not gonna have the north telling the south and vice versa.
That's what you'd
It's
have a
gonna
board
be-
for.
It's gonna be a board that's comprised of all the different areas in the county.
Is Mooresville and Martinsville gonna be in it?
Countywide means countywide.
And honestly, if I had, I'd probably carve those two out at the beginning. Your department, I've been watching for years, because you guys are getting the growth and can't be a volunteer anymore. The days of volunteerism are over.
Exactly, that's what exactly.
It's
I'm
over.
Guarantee it.
So you,
Culturally and culturally and physically or whatever possible.
Right.
because of all the training stuff.
and they're not getting, and the volunteer fireman's not getting off the tractor in the middle of the field to come in to jump on the fire truck to go back. Those days are over. The females are, every dual working family, so volunteerism is really, really struggling. And then if you take the liability that goes along with fire departments, there's $3,000 worth of equipment that you're putting that volunteer in that probably won't be showing up when needed.
That's another thing. We just spent $100 and some thousand not too long ago for breathing apparatus. We got 50 grand for the Cume Fund. We spent 2 years and a half or 2 years and a quarter of that, I think. What was it? You remember 100 and what?
It was 108, I believe.
Or 108?
108, yeah.
Okay, so we spent a pretty good chunk of money and.
But people don't realize it when you move into Monrovia that you're volunteer.
We had to replace the turnout gear. I mean, it's just, it's a.
Oh, it's expensive.
I got the opportunity to run the checkbook for about 3 months, and it helped me, it didn't help me at all.
But
And Brian, we have explored the ideas of a fire territory, and we've talked about the idea of going back to the township fire department. But the trustee, who was a trustee 25 years ago, who is not in favor of fire department, is still the trustee today. So that's not an option. We talked about a territory, and then it didn't go as we thought it would.
No, I think it needs to be a fire district.
Yeah.
Mike and I talked about that. Territories are too
No one does territories.
temporary and too unstable. All it takes is one or two of those units that are in the territory to change their mind and they no longer want to be it, and that just destroys the territory. I think it needs to be more permanent, but I really think that you need a fire district that encompasses more than one township, because you're never, ever, ever gonna have enough tax base
Right.
to be able to afford the equipment you gotta have to fight fires or to do rescues and all those things that we need for you to do. But you just are simply not gonna be able to do it without a larger tax base that doesn't break the backs of the taxpayers.
And the problem is that the taxes are backwards, so that you need the equipment before you get the base.
Right. There is a way, because many other departments have done it. We just got to figure out how to do it. So,
We're not arguing that you don't need it, but the process needs to start sooner, so.
And you realize you need to submit a budget by October 5th.
correct.
If you could get that to me by the Friday before your budget that you want to propose for this group. I mean, this council,
Start over, what did you just say?
well, your $445,000 budget.
I know it's a bad idea, now go on.
No, well, I mean, it's one that can't be funded for at least now, that you need to submit a budget that's $198,000. And I need it to, in order to be able to present it to the council for them to approve on October the 5th, I need it the Friday before October the 5th, whatever day that is. And this council, if they approved your $445,000, then in, October 2nd, that Friday. If they would approve that, that's just only gonna be temporary because in 30, 45 days, when DLGF reviews it, they're gonna cut it to 198,000.
You don't want them cutting it.
No, they're not, they're just gonna, start one end until they get to that point and
Well,
throw
this
this
is
stuff.
a new experience for me dealing with this.
Yeah, I know it is. We've talked a lot. Do what?
Pleased with the experience.
Yeah, I know, we,
Folks have been pleasant, but
it's,
something.
but it's the stark
something-
reality, but,
Something has to be done, and I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me as a resident of Monroe Township that we got all this equipment and a big humongous station, and we don't have anybody there. And you can't get anybody there. And we were paying $10 an hour, raise it to 13, we're hoping for $13.50 next year. I mean, it's, I suppose we're gonna have to go out and do a boot drive like we did 40, 30 years ago, to try to collect the money, but
well, I think well,
it's okay, don't worry about it.
You know,
I'm just being grumpy now.
what
well,
you-
I understand your frustration, but,
you made a comment that raising it 3% on taxes every year is still not gonna be able to make you be able to afford to run it.
I don't think so.
So,
No,
so
that's what the-
realistically, what you need to be thinking of, and that's not us, some people would be glad to help, but you guys, all the fire departments are gonna have to figure out, all the ones that need it, are gonna have to figure out how to work together. And even if it's something that the old volunteers do not want, is a countywide budget.
I'm in the checkout lane.
I understand.
It don't make a lot of difference.
Well, you do, you're here.
Not the old volunteers,
You do make a difference because you're here fighting for something you believe in. And we believe in it too. And we want it, believe me, because if we ever build a house, we want fire department coverage. But it's got to be done however you can put it together and not expect to raise taxes 3% every year on your people and still not be able to run it. So that's all I'm saying, sir, is I respect everything.
3% a year might be all right if we got to some number that would work.
I don't think that 3% is ever going, or 3 cents on your 100. Maybe I should have said.
I can assure you, I won't live enough to take what we've got and get 3% a year and have.
Well, let's just do 3 cents on the 100, because that's what I meant to say. 3 cents on the 100, raising taxes,
Oh,
is
3
not
cents,
going to
yeah,
do
okay.
it.
I was talking about, I thought I heard something about 2.9%, so.
Well, I don't know, yeah.
Do any of your other representatives have any
I don't know if
questions?
This helps you, but I took that.
And Kelly will
I
get
had
you
a
some
different number,
information.
442, but we were within. But I took that, your proposed budget of 2021, I compared it to the 2020 budget to show the difference. And then down here at the very bottom, I raised this because we weren't counting the revenue you're getting from the county on reimbursing utilities. So when we add that in, the budget can actually, the total budget can be 198,000.
Volunteer has to do it with a
Buying a
never
lot and
funded
building
one
up
that
there.
countywide fire.
These people have no idea that that's not a full 24/7 fire station.
Different, come up with the budget line items for the 2021 that
Most of
sum
Marion
up to
County,
198.
They think they have a full-time fire department.
Okay.
Thank you.
County Solid Waste District.
It's too fluid.
Am I supposed I'm not going to touch that.
But I came tonight.
Yes, sir. And then that's just the county.
Yeah, you want to talk about that?
Well,
You feel good about it?
yes, oh, I still feel good about it. Nothing's changed.
Action on that, right?
It's just the hearing. Is there anybody here from the public that wants to discuss the Morgan County Solid Waste District's budget?
I don't think people have any idea what.
Moving on, is there anybody here that wants to discuss the proposed Morgan County budget?
No comments, Jason? Hearing none. Dan assures us.
Everything's the same as what it was on September the 2nd.
Moving along, Steve Lyday, vaccine distribution.
Roll up your sleeves.
You're going to be the guinea pig. We haven't even tested this
Yeah.
vaccine.
Well, the good news is I'm not asking for money tonight. But I am getting it on the agenda, so
There's always a but.
I just wanted to get this on everybody's radar, and I thank Dan for getting me on here tonight. I had passed out earlier before the meeting started some of the information I got for planning for the upcoming vaccines that are supposedly being developed. This first phase of the vaccine will occur the second quarter of this year. And that's going to be sometime November, October, December, whenever they decide to make it available. It's going to be done in a tiered system. The first tier is going to be the frontline healthcare workers. The second tier is going to be essential employees, and we'll talk a little bit about that here in a minute. And the last one is going to be for nursing homes and home health care patients and facilities. The frontline healthcare workers, with the exception of the dentists, I pretty much have plans in place where the hospitals will pick up their vaccines and administer it to their personnel and throughout their network. So that's really off our plate. Same thing with the long-term care facilities. The plans that I have in place is they will pick their vaccines up, they will administer it to their personnel and to their patients. The big unknown is the essential workers, and as you see, that's to be determined, or what that means. I can tell you up front that's going to be first responders, that it's going to be government personnel, both county and municipal, and those type of individuals. The rest of the term essential scares me because I don't know what that means. If they throw the teachers into this mix, what I'm about to tell you will double. I can tell you right now. For a long time, they've been telling store employees, restaurant employees, truck drivers that they were essential. So then they're going to look them in the face and tell them you're not essential for the vaccine. I don't know how that's going to work. That's something that concerns me. It also concerns me that when this gets out to the public, wherever we're going to administer this, we're going to have a level of security because you just don't know what the public response is going to be. So that all being said and done, I've kind of come up with some rough numbers to think about. I'm going to need 25 people each day for each location, and I'm guesstimating 4 days to make this happen. Now, our health department only has 10 employees, so you can already see the deficit right there. I don't think I'm going to be able to get volunteers in to do this just because of the public perception. The volunteers have been very unreliable. We're just talking about volunteers. So I'm going to have to plan. I'm going to try to reduce the number that we spend on this with volunteers and people willing to help. I have some lined up, but not with any substantial amount to make this happen. So that being said, I'm contacting staffing agencies, medical staffing agencies. I'm trying to come up with some real hardcore numbers that we can work with. My guesstimate now is we need to consider at least starting out with 50,000. I could very easily see that growing. Not only do we have one round of this, but based on there's 2 different types of vaccines on here. One's a 21-day turnaround where we'll have to do it again in 21 days. And another one is we're going to have to do it again in 28 days, depending on the vaccine that we get. The storage of the vaccines and the life expectancy of these vaccines before we administer them are 10 days or less. So there are a lot of challenges that we're going to be faced with. And I simply do not have all the answers I need to plan effectively. But I didn't want this to come up the last minute. Oh, by the way, so I'm working real hard. I'm going to try to have some numbers finalized. I'm going to try to get it on the next agenda if I can get some stuff to Dan to make that happen. But I'm going to warn you, it could very easily increase. Now, I've talked with Josh, and we're fairly confident on 2 points of the CARES Act that we could be reimbursed. I know, Brian, you don't want to hear that. But that this is one of the cases the CARES Act's there for. But this is not an option. Then the rest of it's going to come out in phases, and they're talking about actual public getting it the second, third quarter of next year. Might even be pushed back to the fourth quarter. So I'm not sure how that's going to look, whether doctors' offices will be administering those or the hospitals like they did with H1N1. We have to do what we call pods, points of dispensing. And if we have to do that, well, roll out the checkbook again because we're going to have to figure out how to make that happen. But right now, I'm dealing with what I know I've shared with you. If you have any questions, please feel free. If you have any advice, I'm all ears.
Are there any partnerships with pharmacies to do any of these vaccinations? Like they do the flu shots?
Well, we're not at that stage yet. Again, when it gets to the general public, maybe, but we're not talking general public at this point.
The state's not working individually with any sort of pharmacies to
Right.
do any, okay.
Right. I have no idea how that's going to look. What I know right now is the frontline employees, essential employees, and the most vulnerable, which are those in long-term care facilities and home health care. So that's what we're looking at now. The criteria that rolls out after that, your guess is as good as mine. But I pretty much guessed this was the way the first rollout was going to go. Where in H1N1, the kids were the most vulnerable, and that's where the vaccines, though they were limited, was to the school system. This is kind of a different flavor. It's going to the elderly and high-risk populations.
And do you foresee limitations, like these being limited? I mean, the vaccines
I do.
being available?
I see them, it's like going to be like the flu vaccine and everything else. I don't think the school-age children and the younger children are going to be on the target anytime soon. It's going to go by risk factors down. Children are very low risk in this. So I think when it becomes more available, readily available, that's when those under 18, will be receiving their shots. It's broke down by age groups, 85 to 60, and then you're going to see 60 to 40, then 40 to 30, unless they make it public where people can go get on their own. But these are given free at this point. So
I appreciate the numbers and
And it is volunteer, right?
on our radar.
getting the vaccine for everybody but you, sir.
Going to be my question. If you're an essential worker, do you have the choice to decline?
This is still the United States, you always have the choice, but I will say this, I will be taking it. I'm fairly confident in it. When they do drug trials, they take 4 or 5 years to do. What they've done with this one is first of all, they determined the first phase of it, that it is an effective vaccine. And the second one was, is it safe? You know, what are there any short-term health risks? So we're past that point where we're pretty much determined it's safe. The next 2 phases are, how long does the vaccine last? That we still don't know. And are there any long-term health risks? You know, like pulmonary issues, respiratory issues, but they seem to be very minimal at this stage. In my mind, being the high-risk end of it, it's worth the risk to me.
What stages of approval? What agencies approve this?
This is going through the FDA and the CDC are the ones they're running this. The FDA approves all drugs. So they're the ones that are doing it, but it's under the, what is that, the Emergency Authorization Act, the EUA. I got it put on the bottom of yours because when I read the acronym, I didn't know what it meant either. So that's where we're at with that.
So it sounds like right now you're anticipating that a single dose is not going to be sufficient. There'll be multiple.
It's definite, it's multiple. It depends on the vaccine, whether it's 21 days later or 28 days later. So in this initial layout, you know, it's going to be, we're going to do it one time, and then 3 weeks or 4 weeks, we're going to do it again.
So if I was doing the math right, you're looking at around 400 people? You said 25 for 4 locations?
I'm looking at vaccines, but roughly we have, what was it, 388 county employees, and then you start adding the other employees, you can almost double that from the other municipalities and fire departments. I think roughly I was looking at roughly 1,000 people through it. The personnel that these are just rough numbers for personnel to hire from the outside to do it. Nurses say they can do 100 shots a day. I think they're pushing it to do that, but that's what they say. So for each day we run this on the initial layout, 6 nurses. Then you got logistics people. You got to have people to screen, people to actually triage people as they come in, whether they're symptomatic or not. There's a whole process, a screening table. The pod process, we practice every year. I mean, that's the easy part. It's getting the people to fill the roles. That's going to be my hard part.
And they're going to have to be people that are capable of administering the injection?
Not all of them. See, that's what I'm saying. Only 6 are needed. The rest of them, I got to have a medical personnel to do the screening, make sure there's no adverse reactions for them getting the shot, because I'm sure, I haven't seen it, but as all things that we've done, there's always you know, if this person has this, they need to do this. So that's a screening process. But the rest of them can be non-medical personnel. And the pay scale that I worked with to come up with the rough numbers, nurses a minimum $30 an hour. That's the number I used, and I used roughly 20, which is probably more or less than some of the other areas. It's a ballpark figure. So that's the numbers I used for that. But 25 per pod per day, 4 days for the first round, and then we get to do it again, same thing. 6 of those being nurses to administer the shots. Of course, I've also talked to Donnie Warren. We're going to try to implement paramedics, EMTs, and I'm going to, still there's a pay involved in that. But I'm trying to work with other agencies to maybe get some volunteer help. I've talked to Activate Care, the clinic down here. They can give us 1 day if it's a Friday, which those 2 will come down and help us. I'm scrambling, trying to find all kinds of different avenues to make this happen. When I find out how many dentists are going to need this, because that's frontline personnel and their staffs, I have no idea what that number is. I don't even know how to reach out to them. So that's something I'm working on next couple of weeks.
Doing a great job.
Well, thank you.
Well, to be on the October 5th meeting, I need that by Friday morning.
I'll have Gene get that down to you tomorrow. We'll use the 50,000 number to start
Okay.
with, but understand, I'm fairly certain that could double, if not double again, so.
Earlier in the spring, I took away from one of your talks that it was showing that there was an expected spike again, like in September, October. Is there any evidence of that?
Well, that was based on the fact that we thought it was going to diminish during the summer, and during this time of year, it did not. Based on the numbers I have been looking at, it's still a slow decrease. I'm happy. So to answer your question, I don't think it's going to spike, but I've not been right, neither nobody's been right about anything with from square one. So who knows is all I'm going to say. But I will say this, of the donut counties around Marion County, we have the lowest positive case rate. We have the lowest death rate. Our statistic positivity for a 7-day rate is 4.5. I think Marion County's at one point was up to 7. They're down to 5.5. The state positivity rate is 7.7 when I looked at it today. The governor's position in executing his plans was we were at 3.6 in July, and we went back up, and that's when he put us back under 4.5. So I don't know when that's going to come down. Look, if he's using the positivity rate as the rule of thumb for that, we're going down. We're looking good. The state as a whole is looking good. The highly concentrated areas are like Marion County, Lake County, and some of the southern counties. So, you know, our surrounding counties, other than Monroe County, they're a hot spot. We're doing pretty good. You know, I'm pretty confident on where we're at.
Hospitalization is going down.
Hospitalization is way down. That's one of the things that puzzled me is the whole idea of the lockdown was to keep, you know, people out of the hospitals because of the fear of ICU beds and ventilators. Anybody wants an ICU bed and a ventilator right now, you can have 2 if you want. So, you know, the goalposts changed from that dynamic to the positivity rate. So that's what I'm working on now to try to look at the crystal ball for the future.
Hard work you've been doing.
Well, thank you. That's all the questions. You guys throw me softballs. All right.
Thanks a lot, Steve.
Thank you.
Any other business that the council would like to bring before other council members?
We want to remind everybody of the Waverly Festival next weekend. Fun family 2-day event. Lots of fun stuff going on. Lots of food. Please go see what we invest in our parks.
Thank you, Vicki. Any other business from the audience that needs to come before the board? There being none, I look for a motion for adjournment.
Moved.
Do I have a second?
Vicki Kivett.
All in favor, say aye.
We'll have fun on October 5th.
That's right.
What are you looking at me so evil?
There's a horse.
Sign a lot of stuff on the 5th? A lot of signatures on the 5th?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are. Yes, you are, Paul. Practice up.
Practice up your scribbling. We sign it like doctors sign it, you wouldn't, you can just sign all of it.
Yeah.